I think open worlds are a very appealing idea for gamers. You're put in these massive spaces with dozens of places to visit, seemingly endless quests to take on, and the freedom to explore how you want. Developers seem to think so as well, because we've been getting an oversaturation of open world games as of late. And back during the 360 PS3 era, when shooters were the most popular genre, a trend started happening where beloved game series like Syndicate were turned into first-person shooters. This upset a lot of people because what made Syndicate was gone. Today we are seeing something similar with series like Mirror's Edge and Metal Gear adding open worlds. While these aren't completely changing genres the way Syndicate did, Metal Gear is still about stealth and Mirror's Edge is still about first-person parkour running, adding an open world to a series that's never used one will alter the design of the game. Sometimes this works out great with series like Far Cry, where adding an open world is the logical next step to evolve its design. But other times the open world is unnecessary, or worse, it removes elements that make the series interesting and replaces it with open world design we've seen dozens of times before. A game I think completely justifies its transition to open world is The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. The core of the game is still the same as the previous games. You have your main quests, side quests, and monster contracts, only now the space you are given is significantly larger, and this larger space is used to expand quests that couldn't be done previously. Monster contracts become thrilling chases, and side missions like A Tower Full of Mice get their own island. This massive space also helps make the Northern Realms feel like a real place by telling the story of a country ravaged by war as you see the effects on both the land and its people. Comparatively, Mirror's Edge Catalyst's open world, the City of Glass, feels unrelated to the rest of the game. The main story is a series of levels that feature straightforward paths, with increasing challenge to test your parkour skills, and they all take place in locations outside of the open world. They don't take advantage of the open space the City of Glass gives, and the city is mostly there to travel from mission to mission. Traversing the city lacks the increasing parkour challenge of the story missions, and over the course of the game, you will travel the same paths over and over, making it quite boring. The city is populated with some running challenges, but personally I didn't find them very interesting. Rather than providing an exciting place for me to explore, the City of Glass felt more like an extra step I now needed to take to get to the parts of the game I actually wanted to see. The good parts of the original Mirror's Edge is still here, there's just now an extra barrier to get to them. So while the core of Mirror's Edge's design doesn't really evolve with its open world inclusion, Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pains does. Its freeform open world setting takes Metal Gear's focus on player experimentation and places you in a true sandbox environment to play around with. How do you approach a base? Do you snipe from a distance or go loud up close? Do you use D-Horse, D-Dog, D-Walker, Quiet, or maybe you just... The Phantom Pain uses its open world to allow players as many options as possible, and I think this is all wonderful. However, the game suffers some of the pitfalls that other open world games have. There are over 150 side ops, which is a real overload of missions, and it doesn't help that they start to repeat in objectives very quickly. If you try and play the game to full completion, it can take you around 90 hours, and it's easy to start getting sick of it. This is a far cry from the much tighter pacing of previous Metal Gear games, which would take around 20 hours for a completionist run. Another thing the Phantom Pain loses is Metal Gear's traditionally told bombastic cinematic narrative. Cutscenes are kept to a minimal, and most of the story is told through collectible tapes.
Your Wolbachia stopped the infection alright, but I still don't get it.
Now, audio logs aren't something that only open-world games do, but a lot have adopted them because it's a great way to double up on collectibles and narrative. It also allows players to experience the narrative at their own pace, which is very much in line with open-world freeform design. Now, I found that there just personally wasn't enough narrative there compared to the previous games to feel satisfying on this front, and it is the reason a lot of people play Metal Gear. But in other ways, I'm okay with this because The Phantom Pain is a game that really gives the impression that it chose to put all of its efforts into the open world gameplay, and that part of the game really is quite good. And then we have Final Fantasy XV. And you could very well make the argument that the series has always been open world-ish, but in 15's case, it's specifically influenced by a more Western approach to open world design. In a very un-Final Fantasy move, it throws you into its open world within the first 10 minutes of the game, and then gives you a large amount of freedom in how you want to explore, and I think it all works quite well. Cruising the world in your car is fun, and the various activities you are given like camping, fishing, chocobo racing, and frog collecting all support the tone and feeling of a road trip. I think 15 makes a great argument for open world design in a Final Fantasy game. Where it falls short is how the narrative feels disconnected from the open world itself. The major plots and events, which include an entire kingdom being overthrown, don't actually impact the inhabitants of the world who still go about their day like nothing happened. The disconnect is worsened when major narrative sections take place outside of the open world in linear environments you can't return to. And once the plot really starts going at the end, the open world is taken away completely. This highlights a major weak point of open world game design. It's very difficult to have a traditional large-scale story in an open world because to make it really pay off, you have to have the world react and respond to the story. And that's a lot of work. So some games will choose to focus on a series of smaller scale stories that add up instead, which is how The Witcher 3 does it, or they decide to tell their story through other means entirely, like Metal Gear Solid 5's collectibles.
Hamburgers. Yes. I became obsessed with them.
I don't deny that open worlds can be downright magical when done right. But because the scale is so much larger than typical games, developers really need to put in that much more extra effort to get them right. But even then, open world design is not some seasoning you can just sprinkle onto any game and make it work. You have to make concessions, and I worry about what these games are losing in these transitions. So instead of putting an open world into their game because it's the popular thing that people like, I think developers should ask, what are the benefits of going open world, and what are the drawbacks? Will this game be fun to play in open world? Can we change it to be fun and keep its identity? Because sometimes these changes can take away from what makes that series special in the first place, and suddenly, it just looks like everything else.